Sweet, eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. When it comes down to it, nobody really knows what the fuck is going on in this universe. Who is sure what is real, and all that exists is only perceived through our senses, which we know can be deceived? What if we are just players in a giant programmed simulation? This is what we are here to rip to shreds this evening, so let me welcome our guests. Claude is back with us tonight because he can't get enough of podcasting. Claude is a close friend, the co-host of Breaking Basic, has recently appeared on Slow News Day with Steve Poikonen, and is a frequent guest of Rogueways and other ventures. As a man with depth, insight, and hilarity, Claude, thank you for being here.
You're very welcome. I just like to talk.
And the host of Slow News Day is also here today. We get to have Steve Poikonen with us as well. He's on again tonight in what feels like an incestuous orgy of podcast swapping. But I'm not sure if it's actually safe for work or not. And in any case, Steve is hilarious and insightful. And I'm glad you're here tonight, Steve. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Lindsay. I'm wearing 2 condoms right now, just so we're all extra safe.
Sweet. So I won't get any STDs tonight. I don't care about these guys, but I just want to protect myself. And finally, we are happy to welcome back Jeff to the show. Jeff is a master level walker of the path and embodies humility and wisdom as he creates music and thoughtfulness wherever he goes on this plane and many others. Jeff, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Jeff, you're the only person here who hasn't started a podcast that none of us have been on your show, but I feel like you should so that we can all be on your show as well.
I think I will. I have a couple ideas been kicking around and have been. It's just a matter of, launching them.
Time, energy. We got you, though. All right. So our pointless question of the episode is, what are the chances of a drill of the exact scenario being carried out at the exact same time and place as the alleged Pittsburgh synagogue shooting?
Of course.
And we'll just use the word allegedly a lot right now.
There's a drill at every single one of these. There was one at the Fort Hood shooting. There was one at the Florida nightclub. There was one at Parkland. I could go on and on. So, but I don't know. I didn't have time to look up. Was there actually a drill for this?
Oh, see, I guess allegedly there was. I didn't actually look into it either.
Not surprised either way.
I just someone had posted that in the group, and I was like, of course there was, because that's all that ever happens now.
Well, tie it in and just say these drills, from a simulation standpoint, it's a test program. They're running it through the test.
Of course.
From a more conspiratorial standpoint, you have the drills to validate what the event that's taking place. You already have personnel that's on site that is under the impression that either it is a drill or B, that it's a live event, but they're responding according to the way that they were programmed to respond, simulated or not. These guys are following orders. The common misconception that people have about conspiracy theories in general is that from a project management standpoint, something like that would be impossible to pull off. Well, not if it's highly compartmentalized.
True.
So it makes perfect sense that people who are trained to respond in a certain way would be on site to respond in a certain way to validate the event that's taking place. It makes sense that these drills happen regularly. Pardon. Because how else are you going to sell it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. It has to become the norm in order for it to be accepted, right? But it can't be too regular, otherwise people get numb to it. So it's got to be just chaotic enough for people to always, get completely up in arms and offended by it, or whatever the huge emotional response.
Yeah. We didn't even mention that there was a drill of the exact same scenario as 9/11 on 9/11 at the time that 9/11 was happening. What happened to Building 7? But someone says that there was a drill at the London bombing as well. That's from Kathy. And Chris is saying that the drill was actually 10 months prior.
Well, that's why they looks like they had one at Bethel Park School in Pittsburgh in September last month.
So it wasn't 10 months, it was 1 month. Still, that's pretty different. Usually they're at the exact same time in the exact same place in the exact same scenario.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe someone can correct us if we're wrong. All right. Well, let's get into the show. So who wants to tell our listening audience what is simulation theory? Oh, wait, Jeff, did you want to say anything about drills?
Oh, no, just that the question is, what are the chances that the drill is, I'd say the chances are 100%.
Oh, right. Good call.
There's a drill, you got something like this that happens. I think sometimes the drill is the event. I think
Oh, right.
they don't even from a training standpoint, if you're trying to train somebody, let's say on an active shooter drill, I would want to send somebody in with blanks and people would in squib loads. You know what I mean? So, and then we'll film the whole thing and then we'll broadcast it like it actually happened.
Sure. And
Really
tying
good
on
point.
to that, I wonder if anybody could find anything to do with hiring of crisis actors around that area over the past few months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that one's hard for me. Like, I understand the people who poke holes in that. Like, people are going to be hiring crisis actors all over the place all the time because we do so many drills. We're like obsessed with the danger of it, or I don't know, whatever. But it is kind of uncanny, like how many crisis actors get hired right before big events like this. And then, yeah, it's like Jeff is saying, like they're in the drill as far as they know, but then it goes live and they're broadcast as actual victims or bystanders, either way.
I've actually been a crisis actor before.
Now we know Claude's CIA.
When I was real quick, when I was in the military, and at the time I didn't even think about this until just now, but that we would do drills where the base was under attack or whatever, and I was on quarters because I'd hurt my back, so they needed people to go out and pretend like they were casualties. So we just happened to have somebody on base that used to work in Hollywood. He had all of the makeup stuff. So they took and they shattered a bunch of fluorescent lighting, and I looked like a zombie. He had put like a fake wound in my head and all this. And so it's a normal thing for the military. So, I mean, you couldn't tell the difference. There were people just laying around. So thinking about it through those eyes, it's absolutely makes sense to me that all of those, maybe there were no dead people.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
It's all right. I see you, Claude. I know you're a shill now. You can't hide from me. I'm just going to add that to all the turmoil. All right. What is simulation theory? We're going to get back to it now. Who wants to tell us?
I'll go. I think it's our best attempt at trying to explain the fact that there seems to be more anomalies in this world than actual rules. So simulation theory. Say, it can't possibly be real because there's too many. We discover all these laws of physics and then we violate them all, on a daily basis all over the world. So that's my kind of compact version of it.
I like it. Yeah.
I had to look this up because, there's a lot of different schools of thought on simulation theory. So I wanted to see, when you Google it, what comes up. So the standard definition that comes up is simulated reality is the hypothesis that reality could be simulated, for example, by a quantum computer simulation to a degree indistinguishable from a true reality, what we know of as true reality, that could contain conscious minds which may or may not be fully aware that they are even living in a simulation. So the Sims example, right? Somebody's, your soul is you sitting behind the computer telling the sim what to eat, what to do all day long. And that actually fits in with, when you think about gnosis and things like that and killing the ego. And you are not you, you're this, right? So it fits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to basically say that it was fairly self-explanatory in that reality itself is a simulation, whether it's computer-based or like the Vedic texts suggest creator deity-based, is probably one of those things that if you believe that it's a simulated reality, it doesn't matter which one you pick. Ultimately, it may guide some of the way that you act. Like Elon Musk believes that we live in a simulated reality, and he's out there like some crazy fucking sociopath half the time. And then the other half of the time, he's like putting on a fucking cape and saving Flint. And like, it doesn't, he seems to be operating from the standpoint that he knows it's not real. So he's got the money to have the fun. Whereas someone who is approaching it from a more religious aspect is probably going to go out of their way to convince people that this is a thing that you can transcend, and that is where death of ego and the Gnostic texts and whatnot come into play. Because I think the Vedas were out a little bit before.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what the exact timeline.
Yeah, no, they're way, way older.
But the concept of a simulated reality is almost as old as writing.
Weird. Yeah, that's so weird to think about, because I think, for me at least, the first time I heard of it was, we'll get into it later, I think, the science of it, but I think it was a mainstream scientific proposal, and I was like, is it a simulation? Like what do people think, we're actually living in a computer and I'm like a character in a game? Like, what the hell? But I never really thought of it as like this much older concept in a religious sense until much more recently, probably the past, I don't know, year or so, or however long I've been hanging out with you guys. So yeah, that is interesting. So what types of things happen? We kind of mentioned the anomalies. Jeff brought that up. So what types of things make people think that this could be a simulation?
Oh my God, people glitch out all the time.
Explain.
Yeah, okay, well, we probably all seen clips of like celebrities where they just stop and stutter, and we kind of have to get this through before they go right back into where they were and taught it. And this happens with not regularity, but often enough to where there's always a rush from media or publicists or whatnot to wipe it under the rug as exhaustion.
Are you talking about like Al Roker, like staring into the camera mindlessly for fucking way too many seconds?
Or Carrie Underwood or Taylor Swift or any number of actors.
What comes to my mind is Hillary Clinton.
Yeah,
yeah, dude, good one.
We can go back to George Bush saying the same thing like 3 or 4 times in a row. Like, I don't remember the exact lines, but
yeah,
I was like, he got stuck. You see it with newscasters sometimes. They'll stick on a word and that's it. And then start talking, babble or whatever, and then come back to whatever the print was.
But
Weird.
If we're seeing that all in famous people, I would tend to be more like, oh, that's MK Ultra or something, not necessarily a simulation thing. Like, do you guys see it in normal people?
My mother.
Normal people.
I mean,
know any normal people.
Oh yeah, I guess that's a bad question for this show.
For the show. But for me, I feel like what makes people think it could be a real thing is, well, and I understand that humans are creatures of habit and we're pattern seekers, but things like synchronicity, the same ratio existing in flowers on different continents, all of geometric patterns in nature that exist completely disparately of each other. It's these mathematical quotients that exist in everything that don't seemingly make any sense why they should be connected, but they are somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same code ring and everything, I guess.
Well, and they've actually broken matter down to code.
Mm-hmm.
True. It's like
that's
on
the
or off.
smallest thing that they can get it to at this point is code. I mean,
well, and yeah, and
so
Chris,
I found this and I want to read it real quick because it's Philip K. Dick in an interview in 1977. And he says in the interview, we are living in a computer programmed reality. And the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. And he says, this is the deja vu sensation. This is
Mandela effect. Chris Phoenix was just asking that. And I was like, what's he talking about? But that's what Mandela effect could be.
Definitely Mandela. Yeah.
Nice job, Chris. Weird.
That's interesting. Well, and that same sentiment, obviously, I wasn't going to bring up The Matrix yet, but that same sentiment is echoed all throughout that movie and other movies too. One of my favorite examples is looking at the holodeck in Star Trek. It's indistinguishable from reality.
One of my little pet theories, Cloud, is the whole world is a holodeck, and it fits into the whole flat Earth scenario.
Yeah.
There's a
Excellent.
what do you call it? Wait, what's the term? Superconductor. That's why there's an ice ring around the. That's why there's an ice ring around it, because it's a giant superconductor.
You just blew my mind again. Every time you talk, I'm like, oh shit.
Let's dive a little bit deeper, right? So we know a little bit about kymatics, right? Like you throw a frequency, like not a ferrofluid, but some of those non-Newtonian fluids, and you see pop up that look like living things, right?
Yeah.
So in my crazy brain, it's a kind of like a holodeck is the best analogy I could think of, right? So it's a holodeck. It's a giant, magnet around that has to be kept frozen, hence the ice wall. And underneath it, we have these generation engines that are pushing out different frequencies and creating life forms up out of the earth.
Which ties into like astrology and all kinds of shit too, because that's the changing of the programming or whatever.
Exactly. You're made of the dust of the earth, all those kinds of things.
That ties directly into where we're going next, I guess, with this, right, Lindsay? Because it tie onto that. I feel like if that's the case, this is something that people have been trying to describe and not really having the words or having to use metaphor all throughout ancient texts to describe this very effect. And now we're using different words now, like holodeck, string theory, quantum theory. Those words didn't exist back then. They used what they had.
The old blind man and the elephant thing,
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, true. I like this. Chris Putnam has brought it up a couple times in the chat too, that like there are constants everywhere they look in science. And so if you were writing a simulation, if you're writing a program, you would create constants or limits, right?
Yeah.
And so that's interesting too. Yeah, I feel like every religious tradition in some way gets to it. Even if you look at like heaven and hell, that's still an experience that's outside of this one. So this would still be not the ultimate reality. You would still leave this body. Like, even if we're just talking about Christianity or the Judaic traditions, like, like they don't describe it quite the same, but you're still talking about a more ultimate reality than this one. This one is still like a watered down, not very real version of life or reality or whatever.
That's definitely what the marketing says, isn't it?
What do you mean?
In terms of like why you should aim to get to a heaven.
Oh, right. You're going to be eternally in that reality instead of this one. So you should be nice to people.
It's a much, much better reality. And it does kind of shape the way that people of faith experience the reality that they live in. And that reality is different from their neighbor's reality with a different religion, which is different from the reality that their agnostic neighbor lives in. We're all living in separate realities 100% of the time. And conflict is when your reality and somebody else's reality have a negative reaction to one another because you're living two different lives and you have to experience them together simultaneously.
So now you just reminded me of a book I'm teaching right now in my class, and it's called Arcadia, and it's a graphic novel, and it's super good. And it's like way beyond them, but they're like grappling through it. I'm super proud of them. But it's about this, like I don't want to ruin it for everybody. Anyway, the world, spoiler alert, the world is kind of ravaged by this disease, and all the people who are dying get uploaded into the simulation Arcadia. Long story short, what Steve is saying is like happening. It was actually only meant for one person. And it was meant that everyone would have their own. And instead of doing that, they shoved everyone into the same one. And so shit is super fucked up. So
I should check this out.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's really good. And I think it's a series, so I'll get to continue with it. The description that got me, though, bringing it back to the Matrix, I hope people are getting drunk out there. Jeff's drinking game is going to kill everyone. But the description of the book was The Matrix, but better.
Every time someone says Matrix,
yeah. So now we're already like 5 shots in now. This is not alcohol, by the way, allegedly.
Wink, wink, allegedly.
Oh, I don't drink anymore. I'm almost 2 years out of the business. But I I will think about lighting a joint every time.
A joint every time. Oh shit.
Well, I put it out. I didn't roll a lot. I just roll big joints.
I actually don't drink either, Steve. We're in good company here. Claude, on the other hand, is a dirty, dirty drinker.
Dirty drinker.
Okay. So which cultural examples or allegories or parallels to simulation theory have you noticed? We've already mentioned a bunch. Is there any more that you guys have seen?
I mean, personally, it's the way that like objects materialize and dematerialize, at least in the reality that I experience. And it's not just car keys or like clothes. Like there are times when a laptop or something will be in a room and then relocate and then come back to and it's not, I'm not hallucinating that. I know, I can tell you the last time that I did psychedelics. You know, nobody put nothing in my drink. I can't get Cosby'd if I try, so I'm not worried about that. But the way that objects move, and this happens like even in traffic, like you'll see a car that will skip a couple of steps, or at least I do. Or people that skip a couple of steps.
Errors in the code.
I definitely have, like even yesterday I had a crazy experience with an object showing up in my space that had no reason to be there and was really significant and weird. And I'm like, all right, whatever universe. I didn't say whatever universe, I totally listened, but it is really strange how weird shit can happen. It does explain a lot of weird shit.
For cultural examples, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was agreeing. I'd say it definitely does explain a lot of weird things, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, just for cultural examples, you know, drawing on the things around us. Being a computer programmer, I program databases as a SQL programmer. I wrote down, you know, we perform robotic computerized tasks in every single thing that we do, even subconsciously, things that when you're driving, you don't pay attention to driving. After you've done it a few times, it becomes second nature. You are a program. You're running a subset of code in your mind at that time. You've got code that makes your heart beat. You've got code that makes you breathe. You don't have to think about these things. It's all automatic. You know, it's these little scripts that are running constantly. You don't have to pay attention to. And then I loved Chris's example, Chris Putnam in the chat earlier. He was talking about code. And when you're programming a video game or anything for that matter, there's a concept called object-oriented protocol that is used to define what it is that you're programming. So if I'm going to create a game like Witcher or The Sims or whatever it is, I'm going to say, this is a human, and the human has objects attached to him. He has 2 arms. He has 2 legs. You can't have the legs without the human. And that's how reality is built in a computer game. The human is subject to all of the rules of the world around him. In the video game, you may have a can. The can has the same type of properties. The can relates to the human in such a way that the human uses the can. The human can affect the can can't really affect the human. And I subscribe to a lot of Hermetic principles, as above, so below, rhythm, synchronicity, all those things. And all of those rules and laws of the universe that have been around for centuries, they all fit directly into what we're doing now to create our own little inner worlds that we call video games or tax software or whatever it is that we use. And, you know, Elon Musk even came out the other day saying, he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about people carrying their phones around with them all the time, making them cyborgs. I agree with that to a point, but I think we're already cyborgs thinking about it this way. We're already robots. Anyway, that's my 2018 cultural allegory.
Flesh robots, maybe.
For chicken people. Chicken people make bad robots.
Well, Chris, you should have just come on the show because he's bringing up a bunch of really cool stuff. And one of them is that a couple of the cultural examples or parallels that we see is the idea that I guess Tracy Twyman brought up that a simulation doesn't necessarily have to be a computer program. He says she gave one example of how it could be an alchemist who makes a little world inside of a bottle. So like a little terrarium is like a sub world, you know, or like I go look at our fish. We have fish, unfortunately. And I look in at them and I'm like, they don't even see me here staring in at them, you know, like they're right in front of my face and they have no idea I'm there and they're swimming around all day and that's their whole world to them. So it kind of makes me think of that too. And then he also talks about a series called Myst where people write books with a magic language that creates a world based on what they watch. Which is kind of, I was kind of terrified yesterday. I was talking to someone, Harmony, shout out, and we were talking about what if every thought you have, it either manifests in your physical reality like directly or soon after, or it has to go somewhere else and manifest. And so you're literally just like creating all the time. So when you think of all that fucked up shit in your head sometimes, like you're creating that reality. All right, I don't know if that has anything to do with simulation theory, but it was a weird thought.
Yeah, sure it does. Especially when you take it into the occult side. What are you trying to do? You're trying to change reality with your intention.
Well, no, I'm like, even if you're not, like if you're just like thinking and you're like, that'd be weird if a purple dinosaur like crushed a building and, you know, or what, just like random shit, like that is created somewhere.
How many times have you had that happen in your life, though? I know I'll be thinking about something, and then I'll see it like 2 days later, and I'll go, whoa, that's weird.
Yes.
And it'll feel like deja vu, like Steve was saying, but I'm like, I really did just see that, but now it's over here. Or I really. But
I'm not sure if I'm just psychic or I'm like making it happen.
Well, maybe that explains some of these paranormal phenomenon that we're talking about. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but.
So I watched a TED Talk by an astrophysicist named George Smoot before the show tonight. And he said basically all anyone had to do at any point in order to make it a genuine computer simulation was map somebody's brain and download it into a computer.
Which is what they're trying to do. And we're like flooded with that in culture right now.
Like that, according to him, the technology was there. The brain scan tech was down to the individual neuron. They were, when he gave that talk in 2013, they were at the point where it could be a reality.
I don't agree because I have experience in my life of things that can't be downloaded into a computer. Personally, that's where I stand. I don't disbelieve that they said that or that they think that, or maybe it's real and I'm wrong, but I'm not there.
Well, I think that's part of what's going to be missing if what's his name, Ray Kurzweil, is able to upload his consciousness into a computer the way he constantly preaches that he's trying to do. Mm-hmm. He's going to be missing his soul. He's going to be missing a piece of what makes him human, right?
Yeah, you don't get that divine spark in a computer. Sorry.
No.
I don't think so. Again, I don't really know things, right?
Well, look at Data. Data's a complete AI on Star Trek, and he's struggling to be human throughout the entire show. That's the point of it. A robot, a artificial intelligence is never going to have the whatever it is
that's its whole own debate. Dude, we should do AI next Sunday, but Jeff wants to say something.
No, I was going to say, in going along with that, you know, we all have our complex brain as the first part of our regular brains, which is the reptilian brain, which has no ability to process emotion. And without that, you know, we're less than human. And it's there in everybody. So maybe we started out and we evolved. Who's to say that the divine spark isn't a type of AI?
The all is mind.
No, you're killing me.
All
right. I'm just not there.
Yeah.
Yet. Hopefully never. Okay. I want to hold on to my beliefs. This is why we have to do a whole show about it. Because if I should be convinced, I should be convinced. But right now I'm
get woke, Lindsay.
Get woke. All right. So what in mainstream science have we seen? Steve just brought up the guy who said we could map the whole entire brain and download it, and we were talking about that. But I know there's other stuff. I think Claude was looking into something too.
Yeah, so honestly, I've got a lot on this. I'll try to keep it short. So, what aspects of mainstream science? All mainstream science. I wrote down quantum physics, medicine, modern medicine, even older medicine, statistics, and all of math. Any of those things are all that they're trying to do is quantify what's around us at all times, and they're trying to modify what's around us. It's all
They're trying to hack the code.
But yeah, it's all inputting data into variables to come up to a new solution, right, to the same problems. So we already talked about Elon Musk saying that we're cyborgs. You know, we have access to data now instantaneously that we didn't have access to before, allegedly, and that gives us a layer of variables into our surroundings in order to create the even bigger web of weird around us. Computer processors, consider how computer processors work. They work in cycles, and you have multi-core processors. You can perform multiple cycles at once. Reality works the exact same way. Look at seasons on the Earth, cycles of the moon, solar cycles, all of this stuff. Everything, I guess I'm repeating myself, but everything follows these same types of cycles. And we've built our technology around that same concept. All of it. So.
Yeah. I don't know if that's an example of skeuomorphism or not, but that's a concept where we design things similarly to how we have seen things designed. So like, even if they don't have to, so like an example is like our phone apps for a while, or maybe you still can get them have there's like a rotary option. It's like you have a touch phone, like a cell phone, but you're still doing rotary. It's like for some reason we tend to like use the same designs over and over again.
Well, yeah, we're creatures constantly searching for patterns, and we find these patterns that feel familiar to us at a real visceral level. You know, using that reptilian brain that Jeff was talking about, this seems natural to us, and that's what we gravitate toward. There's a reason that not all paintings look like Picasso's, but Picasso's famous because he was different, and if people want a little taste of the different, they go look at a Picasso. The rest of their lives are spent staring at little screens, little squares, circles, and the same geometric patterns all around us. We built our houses, our architecture, all of that the same way.
Dude, how would holographic universe tie into simulation theory? They're like pretty compatible, right?
Like
one of the same.
And so like holographic universe is the central tenet of holographic universe is that it's really hermetic in that patterns will mimic each other from the micro world to the macro world.
Yeah.
In a hologram, you can break off any part of the actual hologram. It contains all the information for the entire hologram. So right. It's kind of like you can look at a flower and divide it into all its little quadrants and golden ratios and see the same thing throughout everything in nature.
Yes.
It's like that.
I think that's real. Like, I think that's true.
I do too. So if you're building a world, you would build it on certain sort of, rules. And I think that's part of the rules of the simulated reality. We can witness them in the nature of the holographic universe. They're blended. I can't separate the two. They're tied in together.
They're pretty similar.
You always take it down to the smallest possible variable too. What's as small as you can get is 1 and 0 binary data on and off, and you can build a fractal from there up and all the way down, and you can always reduce it down to a 1 or a 0 all throughout nature, anywhere in nature.
But see, okay, I go back to this. Like, is that not just us, like, putting our conceptualization, like, over the top of something and breaking it down for ourselves to understand? That doesn't make that thing that way.
If you want to put it into a more divine or esoteric perspective, that's what a mandala is. That's 100%. It's a binary system. I've had it explained to me when I had someone who was Hindu explain their version of simulation theory to me, is that the mandala represented the fact that it was there. It's not. It's all fucking code, but that they didn't have the parameters.
Yeah.
To explain code.
Okay, but it's not. Even in computer programming, it's not actually just ones or zeros. It's 1 or 0 or both or neither.
Well, we do that in electronics. We have the AND gate, the NOR gate, the XOR gate. It's all to do. It's all to direct energy into certain patterns to do certain things, ultimately to affect an on or off state, and no matter what it is that you're trying to do.
Or both. Like that's quantum computing, is that you can have both at once. And then when nothing's happening with the computer, that's nothing, right? So you have 1 or 0 or neither or both.
But what happens over here, you're going to have the opposite over here in quantum physics. So if an electron is in an on state over here, this one is going to be off. And that's how you transmit data over long distances. By splitting an electron, basically, you can do it over 600 miles. If this electron's off, this one's going to be on, and vice versa.
Well, you can also have them the same. Like
Well,
you can have electron spin resonance at any distance as well.
Well, it's a little different. But I'm going to think about that.
I'm just saying, I think what I'm, because I was thinking about like the duality of things. We're so off simulation theory for a second. Like if you have just on or off, that's this duality that's not very realistic, but there's a spectrum too. And I think the spectrum is where you're like getting to the both or neither is also there.
But wouldn't it be a degree of on or a degree of off?
Same difference. Yeah. Right.
If you think about it this way, imagine you've got a fan blade, and imagine you're trying to throw a stick through this fan blade. And if the fan blade is spinning slow enough, so the blade is there, that's on. The blade is not there, that's off.
Yeah.
You stick right through it in an off cycle. But if the fan blade's spinning fast enough, it now represents a solid wall. You know,
Okay.
so the on and off states of everything can control what that thing is from a no thing to a solid wall, in a sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm digging it. All right, so because this is my ultimate thing, is that it all really is just like a metaphor that we're overlaying the top of reality. We're just trying to describe something in many different like symbols, like the mandala, or like metaphors like simulation or hologram.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I also think that if we are describing and we are part of the creation, then ultimately we're going to ascribe aspects of the creation to the creation. In a sense, you know, so that whole above thing. So we're going to look at it and we're going to say, oh, it's this, this, and that. Well, because partly it is. In other words, I don't think we can be outside of it, observing it, and then deciding what it is. I think when we observe what it is, we're automatically giving it aspects of its true nature. Because
Amen. We're on the same page. I am not in disagreement.
So there was a quote by, now I can't even find his name again, Michio Kaku. So we were talking about this earlier. His quote, basically he suggests that we are all gods living in a matrix. And if you haven't read about this guy, he's a quantum physicist. He focuses on string theory. He's been working on Einstein's search for a theory of everything, which is basically what we're talking about, right? It's a theory of everything. How does everything work together? Is it a hologram? Is it a simulation? What is it exactly? But how many times throughout ancient literature and religions do we hear the concept of people being created either in the image of a god or they are gods themselves? And sometimes the two phrases are side by side. And kind of like Jeff was saying, we're trying to ascribe these concepts to reality. We're trying to define God, but we're also trying to define reality. So if God is in everything, everything is God, and that makes us gods too. And I think that's his point. Dr. Kaku's point. Or Keku? How do you say? I don't know.
I think it's Kaku.
Yeah.
Michio Kaku.
Yeah. Basically, he calls God a mathematician. So.
excellent.
I think Terry Pratchett suggested the same thing. I don't know if you guys have read Terry Pratchett or not.
I've read. Is that Good Omens, right?
Yeah, he did. He recovered.
Yeah, making a movie out of that, which I have to see, by the way.
Ooh, yeah.
Terry Pratchett writes about Discworld. He has a whole series of books that the Earth is flat, dish-shaped, and it's carried by 4 elephants that sit on top of the world turtle.
Yes.
So that's Discworld, and it just spins. The turtle swims around in space. But yeah, he makes God as a mathematician jokes, and he's got like, you can see a lot of Max Planck's theories come into play in this fantasy world that he created. And I recommend Terry Pratchett to people that haven't read him outside of With Neil and Good Omens, which is one of my favorite. Just, I need something to read that will make me forget why I hate fucking everything so goddamn.
It's called fluff. I love it. But fluff almost always has really deep truth to it. Unless you're reading romance novels. Yep, I said it. I'm judgmental. I'm a bitch. Deal with it.
I can
Sorry.
Hey, while we're still,
Sorry, go ahead. No, you go.
While we're still on the topic of mainstream science, I wanted to bring up James Gates. He's a dude that studied string theory for a few decades now. And a couple years ago, he discovered that there was actual, what he called error correction code in
self-correcting. Crazy.
Wait, explain more about that.
So basically, string theory, string theory, yeah. So I don't know all the full details of string theory, but it's a method of trying to understand the universe and how it functions. And in his studies, mathematically, again, with the whole God's mathematician thing, he found that there were what looked like pieces of computer code and very specific computer code in that they were error correction codes. So basically, if I hit a M on a keyboard, the processor and it sends code back and forth to make sure that was an M that I actually hit before it registered that it was an M that was hit. And that's the type of code that he found, basically woven into the fabric of everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is like too deep. Like that could be its whole own episode. So like if I had an intention of the purple dinosaur crushing something, and then I was like, wait, no, I didn't want that, then maybe there's an error correction code that instead of making that occur in some parallel universe that I have to deal with at another time, it's like, actually, she didn't mean that. Turn that one off.
Yeah, because we don't know the actual mechanism.
Well, that saves me a lot of hassle and cleanup in the afterlife.
A lot of karmic guilt for all the people you wanted to just murder.
Yeah. I joke about being murdery a lot. I don't know that I've ever actually gotten murdery. I do sometimes want to kick people in the face.
Right, me
so,
too.
Yeah.
Me too. Never got murdery.
Never, yeah. Allegedly.
No, never got murdery.
To what Jeff was saying, I feel like one of the things that you hear a lot about is the probabilistic nature of the universe, and everything has a probability of happening. This rock that I'm holding could turn into gold, just randomly. I like the concept of the probability drive
Yeah.
on Hitchhiker's Guide, but that's the case. It's one of the funny things. I spend a lot of time reading through occulty stuff and chaos magic stuff and all this weird, bizarre, alt culture stuff. And one of the things that people talk about a lot is I did a spell to make $1 million or whatever, and I didn't think of the consequences. And the same thing applies to prayer. I feel like nowadays, prayer and whatever else that you're doing to try to change reality around you, you don't know what it's going to take for the universe to be able to turn this rock into gold. Someone in China may have to die for that to happen. And that, I think, is a macro level of that self-correcting code that he's talking about, in that, if this is going to change in the universe over here based on your intent and your will and what you do to put into that and make this thing happen, other things are going to happen to cascade in this giant web of the weird in order for that to change.
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting. Like, I swear this is like part of the simulation right now, because I was just talking to John Brisson about that exact same thing, and I've sort of backed off from intention. Like, I don't know if anybody noticed, but I haven't done the white wave. Not because it upset a few people, but because I am wondering if it's the right thing to do or not. I really don't know for a second. So I'm taking a step back, thinking about it.
Gotta put a lot of thought into it, especially if you consider that the universe is going to correct itself to match your intention. What else does that affect?
And like shit was working. Like in my intention meditation group, which I don't know if many of you are in or whatever, but that 100%, like 100% of the shit that we have done has happened, and the white wave too. So it kind of is like, shit, should we be doing this? Like everything we've done is really good stuff. People are healing and growing, and good things are happening in their life, and we're not like trying to change the fabric of reality or like trying to make gold manifest in front of people or whatever. But it's just really interesting to think about the consequences we don't understand. And yeah, I want to understand more before I go fucking with things.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Right. All right. So,
hey, no, hang on, man. Hang on. So is the law of unintended consequences something that can disprove sim theory?
I don't think so. And I think that's what we're saying. An unintended consequence is the universe course correcting to, how do I?
Because it seems like you can put that down on a binary level.
Well, what were we saying earlier about ones and zeros? If this one goes on, this one goes off, right? Or they're both in an on state or they're both in an off state, to Lindsay's point. The point is, if this action happens, there's going to be an equal and opposite reaction somewhere else, which is an unintended consequence of you doing
is it unintended though? Like if I'm like, I intend for you to heal, then the consequence is you heal.
Unforeseen?
Yes, it's a consequence because the consequence doesn't have to mean good or bad. It's the result of.
Right. That's, yeah. So maybe intentions are fine. Well, and someone was like, this is what John and I were talking about, is that there's that idea that like 3 times forward, 3 times back, like it comes back to you, but it also like goes past what you intended. And but if you're doing good, if you have good intentions, it wouldn't matter where they went.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would like to believe that. I don't know if that's how it works exactly. I'm like Claude said, like even if you're wishing for someone to heal, does that mean that somebody else loses the energy that it took to heal that person?
Like there's a limited amount of healing in the universe.
And where did matter can't be created or destroyed? So that energy had to come from somewhere. Did it come from somebody who was doing fine and like just had an off day on leg day? Like, or did it come from fucking 18 kids on a bus in Yemen? Like, where do we have authority to decide where it came from? Is that something that we get to do?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm asking. I don't know.
I don't know either. Those are really good questions.
If the universe is self-correcting or error-correcting, the way that scientists says, then there is going to be the bill is going to come due, right? Somewhere.
There's a piper to pay.
Yeah. Well, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say maybe that's our role to play. It's like if we ask it and it happens, then we do have authority, and we probably don't need to question whether or not we do or not because we asked and it happened. I feel like if we didn't, then it wouldn't or would never happen. Since we can't control where the energy comes from, like those I don't know, those sort of rules must come down from a higher order, in my opinion.
I totally get what you're saying, yeah. And I like to, most even spiritual traditions feel like there's an infinite amount of energy in the source, right?
Right.
And the energy is always recycling. I call it the holy donut, the figure 8.
The Ouroboros.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking of the Neverending Story, and I don't want to ruin that book for people, because if you have only watched the movie, you are doing yourself a huge disservice. It is like the ultimate occult, like hidden meaning, like pretend children's story ever. It's so good. But the Ouroboros comes into it, and this idea of like unintended consequences and having to tie up a bunch of loose ends. It's really, really good.
It ties in awesome to what we're talking about here. Well, I need to read that again. It's been years.
I read it like once every few years because it's got so many layers to it that like the more I learn in the world and then I go back to it and read it again, I'm like, oh shit, it was saying it all along. I just didn't know. Like it's so good. That's why I tattooed it on my body. People are like, oh, you got a tattoo of Neverending Story, like that movie. I'm like, no, the book. Okay. So like we kind of, I guess we kind of talked about experiences we have in real life that make us think that it could be a simulation. Do you guys have any extras that come up when you think about it?
That's who I think about. The people, you know, those stories about the moms whose kids were pinned under a car and suddenly had Hulk strength. It's like, where does that come from? I don't know. Something hacked somewhere where they suddenly got into God mode and were able to lift a car, and it has nothing to do about the size of the person at all. So it's not adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
If that were the case, then anybody who ever got attacked by a grizzly bear would beat the shit out of a grizzly bear.
True.
And you'd be attacked by a grizzly bear and not being full of adrenaline, you know? So there's something else happening, I think.
Oh, the U.S.
A really good
military
point.
would already have cloned super soldiers if that was the case.
How do you know they haven't?
How do you know?
Well, no. See, I like to draw this back to what Jeff was saying: left, right, up, down, A, B, A, B, Y.
Maybe start select. What?
That's start select. Yes.
Yeah.
It gives you, you have these moments in your life where you just have this, either a mom lifting a van off of her child to save her child, or you hear people having this feeling of oneness when they enter a gnosis state, or you've hacked the Matrix by taking psilocybin, and you can see the stuff around you all of a sudden.
You can see the code.
Right, yeah. I don't even see code anymore. I see,
Blonde, redhead.
So,
Yeah.
everybody take a drink. That was your Matrix reference.
That was the Matrix reference. Matrix. Did I say Matrix?
Oops. Did you say Matrix? I thought I heard you say Matrix.
Oh, I made a quip on the lady in the red dress. So.
Oh, so you did say Matrix. What I'm actually doing is just saying Matrix as often as I can so that everyone is trashed.
So, but yeah, I mean, you see that stuff everywhere, and I don't know. It all matches as opposed to blue to me. So that's all I got.
Yeah. I mean, there's a shitload of experiences I have that could show simulation theory, but they could show so many other things too. Like, it just depends on which way you're looking at it. But what about with conspiracy? Are there any conspiracy theories you think tie into simulation theory?
God, I think cryptids tied in perfectly with simulation theory. I think that I think we had brought up like bouncing back and forth between different dimensions. That's an esoteric way of saying they wrote him out for that scene.
Yeah.
I think that the sheer number of events that we've had that keep repeating themselves over and over and over, while absolutely nothing but loss of personal freedoms occur, is proof of that we're living in a directed reality. You want to call that simulated reality? I would be more inclined to agree with that than go out of my way to disprove it.
Dude, was it you, Steve, that was saying like the shooter's name, the alleged shooter of this alleged atrocity?
If you listen to the news coverage, they're like, Caesar Psyop, Caesar Psyop, Caesar Psyop. It's like,
Psyop.
And his name is spelled like SAYOC, Psyop. Like,
and he's computer generated.
Yes, he looks computer generated, dude. Was it Claude? You were the one who brought up his hairline, right? But I was looking at his picture too before that, and I was like, dude doesn't look right. Like, dude looks like those faces. If you go look at what the faces that AI can produce, like human faces that they're creating, they all look like a little off. Like, it really is. I don't think it's just because I know they're AI created. You just look at them and you're like, there's something weird about that, and his face looks like that.
That uncanny valley. I think the more you look at, the more you observe these things, the more you kind of find little weird, little shitty things like that. And like, there's another good one. A couple years ago, there was a kid. Did he shoot up a church? It was like a neo-Nazi kid, and he shot up a black church.
Oh yeah.
And his middle name was Storm or something, like Dylan Storm.
Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah.
Aside from that sounding like a superhero, like a made-up superhero name, I found it odd that there's Dylan Storm, and then there's this website like Stormfront or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Just full of Klan propaganda and Nazi propaganda. That's like their hangout, Stormfront.
Yeah.
Oh.
I just found that to be an odd coincidence.
Storefront's been
Way too
around.
odd.
World of
Storefront's been around since the internet.
You
Yeah.
bring up an interesting word there, Jeff. Coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence anymore, and I think it all ties in to synchronicities. You know, one thing is like another. And I feel like if you want to get very conspiratorial about us, they take that fact that we have all of these coincidences happening around us, drawing back to the first question of the night where we talked about, was there a what was it? Was there a drill going on before the shooting? They're going to call it a coincidence. Oh, that was just a coincidence. No, I think they're using the rules of the universe to direct what's happening, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Matrix again, because you were talking about cryptids and wondering how they tied in. Well, in the Matrix, they used the metaphor or allegory, whatever you want to call it, of older versions of the Matrix and programs existing in the newer version of the Matrix that existed in the old version, right?
Oh.
They called him the Ghost and the Merovingian and all this fun stuff.
So
And
some
they
shit didn't get updated.
right? And they ran under different rules than the new version does. So they
Yeah.
didn't fit in.
That makes a lot of sense. That also could explain why fairy phenomena seem to turn into alien phenomena, seems to turn into like entities on psychedelics phenomena, or how like the spotting of UFOs seems to change over time. Like it's always just a little bit ahead of our technology at the time.
Now let's tie it one level deeper. Maybe the Kali Yuga cycles are just versions of the Matrix.
But why would they keep recycling? Why would we keep going through the same?
You're gonna have to watch Matrix Revolutions for that one.
Yeah.
Okay, upgrades and downgrades. Anything else from the occult or paranormal that you guys see tying in?
God,
Lots.
There's so much, I know.
But talking about cryptids one more time. So there was a movie, I think I referenced this before, but it was called The Men Who Stare at Goats. And the movie was a comedy, but it was based on real events. And they asked somebody, one of the characters in there, if they ever looked at the Loch Ness Monster. And he said, yeah, it was the ghost of a dinosaur. And of course, that was the big joke. But, if you think about what that actually means, I feel like a lot of these cryptids could be metaphorical ghosts. They could be echoes of times that are gone that we're seeing, looking like the real thing, but they might not actually be all the way real here. I mean, what defines reality? Other than, of course, like in the Matrix, it said, the electrical signals in your brain and everything. And that's true. But it's also light bouncing off of objects, a lot of light encoding, which is holographic in nature to me. So
Yes.
To me, in this world, a hologram would be indistinguishable from real life.
That's a really good, like ghosts and like this you're talking about with the Loch Ness and stuff could be, the hard drive wasn't quite scrubbed completely before they like installed the new operating system or whatever.
Yeah. There's a
Little echoes.
lot of these things, especially those kinds of cryptids, like, because I'm a dinosaur nerd, so, all the ones with the giant flying reptiles and the Okele Mbembe and all those kinds of things, they fascinate me. But there's no place for some of these creatures to still live. They'll see one like crossing the street or something in a regular town. It's like, where'd it go? It's like a 40-ton animal. It's not just going to vanish.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't all the way there.
Yeah, once in a while you'll be playing a video game or something, and an update has come out. Especially if you're playing online games or whatever, like World of Warcraft or something. You haven't updated to the most latest version, and you're logged in with all the other players, and they're off doing something, or their character, their avatar, whatever, is wearing some kind of armor, and it's not rendering on your screen at all. You can't, he looks, he's not wearing a hat, or he's naked. He's running around. He's like, oh, I can kill him. He's naked. I go to hit him. He turns around and smacks me, and I die because he's wearing some godly armor that came out with a new patch, right?
What?
I can't see it yet.
I don't play massive multi-online shit, and I never have, so I've never seen that. I didn't know that happened.
Happens all the time. Happens all the
Wow.
time. And then there's crazy glitches. One of the unintended consequences of coding that they didn't think of. One of my favorite examples is the plague. So there was a bunch of guys that were running around in this dungeon in World of Warcraft, and one of the bosses, he will give some kind of disease to one of the characters, and it spreads between all your party that's there with you. And so the guy, he got the disease and he teleported out of the dungeon and went to one of the main cities. And the disease that's not supposed to exist outside of that dungeon suddenly is infecting all the other people in the game.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
So it's bizarre. It's a really, really cool, little conspiratorial thing. Oh, Blizzard put that as an Easter egg. Well, if Blizzard created World of Warcraft and they put these kind of Easter eggs in there for them to find, let's take that as a level higher and say maybe God is the designer and he gave us all kinds of little Easter eggs to find.
Yeah.
Even in Revelation, it says in the end, the mysteries will be revealed. So
Yeah, I feel like all the how bizarre things are getting. Like there's a politician named Wiener who has trouble with his wiener, and like the psyop, the shooter's name is psyop, and like all these things. It's just like, is it just like getting towards the end of the simulation? It's running out of like shit to throw at us, or like, I don't know.
I'm actually of the opinion that that's the case. Either that or like that whole sci-fi simulation we've all feared, like The Matrix, is actually starting, and these are the beginning parts of it. And once it's really even going to know it happened, we'll just be automatically in it, and not even realize.
Yes, like it's kind of like the everyone died in 2012 thing. Like, how would you know?
I don't think you would, and that ties in. So I've got another conspiratorial thing. Think about Agenda 21, the Georgia Guidestones, how they want to keep the population at a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
You think about the way they do that in online games. They'll open up another server so more people can log in, right? Because that one server is getting overcrowded. They'll open up another one. Then, to really screw things up, if the population on both servers starts falling, they'll merge the servers back together. Then you get crazy things like Mandela effect. I remember this happening, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
So my theory is that when the Weasel got in the Large Hadron Collider and stopped it in 2012, that it killed irony, but it could have been a catalyst for we all died in 2012. I think shit. What were we just talking about?
I actually can't remember what we were just talking about. Oh, the merging of different servers for the Agenda 21.
No, we've had it's the whole fucking thing. PSYOP, the all of these events that are coordinated around all of these exercises, the way that we're being robbed blind by our government, it's also fucking cartoonish. It is like, bad television writing couldn't make the shit that is happening that we see as bad as it is. Like Claude maybe, or I can't remember, said they may be running out of shit to do in the simulation, and they're like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Just
Even like that.
We're out of ideas. Fast and Furious 19, fucking, and people go buy it, like,
or they're like trying to wake us all up. They're like, okay, if we make this absurd reality TV show guy president, and then we send in this rapper who thinks he's Jesus, talking to him in the White House in the Oval Office, maybe they'll be like, oh shit, this can't be real.
Let's go ahead and do prison reform. Yeah. Fucking the fact that there's a game show host in the White House.
Yeah.
Like, and if it wasn't a game show host, it was gonna be a fucking goddamn lizard person.
A lizard person who eats babies.
Allegedly.
But consider this for a second. So I subscribe to the theory that fiction follows, or reality follows fiction all day long. And you can find examples of weird people becoming president all throughout American literature. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Idiocracy.
Yeah, this stuff happens in fiction all the time. So
the last president.
Right. So back to your point from earlier, Lindsay, you were talking about how our intention could change the world. Well, imagine how much intention is put onto all of this garbage that we've been putting into our minds from Hollywood and books and comic books and all this other stuff for decades, for centuries.
That's why I hate that we're all on this like super culture rush of downloading our consciousness onto machines, because I feel like it's like creating it, and I don't want that.
You're right. So now it's all playing out in reality. We've written reality for ourselves, right? and we're reaping the rewards because one of the classic things about an evolved culture or whatever is that they have no war, they have peace, don't have want or anything like that. It paints a pretty picture, but it's sure not fun. What do we want to read about? We want to read about war. We want to read about weird people getting into positions of power and making the most bizarre choices, and because that's fun, right? Otherwise reality is just boring. So we create these alternate fictional realities, and they put all of our thought and intention into it, and it eventually comes to pass.
Okay, Chris Putnam again should have just been on the show today because this is like the 10th shout out. But he said, first of all, related to what you're just saying, Claude, he says there's a quote by LP. I don't know who that is. But he says it's only sci-fi until it's reality.
Yeah.
And then he also said, if AI is generating our world, like if we're in a simulation, it's dominated by or run by an AI, and we're all writing fiction, maybe the AI is, like he said, grokking, nice drop there, grokking it all, and then it's folded into the generated code. So I should finish my book because the world is saved in the best way ever.
Do it. Let's make it go viral so we can change the world.
Yeah. I promise to donate all proceeds to starting the Eyes Open super commune where everyone gets to be free and do what they want. Unless they're, never mind, I'll stop now. So this is going to be the best part of the show. How does this all tie in with the NPC meme?
Where do we begin?
It's like a perfect tie-in. I mean, before this NPC thing even became a thing, I was talking to one of my brothers about it. It's like, man, doesn't it seem like some people just can't like think abstractly. They're like such level of cognitive dissonance. You can show them whatever it is right in front of them. They're like, nope, I don't see it. It doesn't exist for them.
Yeah.
So it just kind of so the NPC meme thing blew my mind that it reached almost like a cultural critical mass where it's on so many people's minds now. But we even have scientific studies about people who don't have inner dialogues. But it doesn't surprise me at all. And see, I love simulation theory because for me personally, there's nothing that conflicts with it. It seems to fold everything into itself, and it's like, oh, this is the perfect theory. So that's my opinion. And NPCs, of course, there's going to be NPCs. Of course, there's going to be bosses. There's going to be, villains and tasks, quests you need to complete as a character. All those things.
Yes.
You know what I love about the NPC meme is how one of the things about how true it is that on one hand, people will be talking about how horrible and terrible their government is, their government being Orange Man because the Orange Man's bad. And
Orange Man bad.
And then on the other hand, they're talking about how much more government they need in their lives. So it creates a double negative, and it doesn't compute in my mind. One of the for our staple Matrix quote, I picked out something Morpheus was saying to Neo when Neo first gets woken up. They're walking down the road in the loading program, and he says, "You have to understand, Neo. Most people are not ready to be unplugged, and many of them are so inured and so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it." And that absolutely makes sense because they can't compute that all of these people are on the same team. And I think we've pretty well unequivocally proven that Donald Trump is Hillary's friend, right? Mm-hmm. But they love her and hate him. They can't think abstractly enough to figure out, the way the rest of us have, that it's all a freaking comic book.
They can't look at the long list of provable things that Hillary Clinton has done that are evil as fuck and look at her and be like, that lady's evil as fuck.
I'm with her.
She's got a vagina. God damn it.
Look, though, I mean, we have had ostensibly since its inception, but kicked into overdrive since Kennedy, the CIA in charge of the White House and making policy for every branch of government. Television is called programming for a fucking reason.
All right, in your face.
We have In 1986, they repealed the Fairness Doctrine. In 1994, they passed the Telecom Act, which merged all of the individual media companies into 6 giant companies. In fucking 2001, we signed the Patriot Act without anybody ever fucking reading it, and having tons of people be like, hey, we, you know, going, hey, or we really want to do this. Yes, we're really going to fucking do this. They did that in 2012. They fucking made propaganda legal in the NDAA. And we have been living under a culture defined by its propaganda and programming for so long. That's the fucking Matrix. There, I fucking said it for the first time in the goddamn show. It's that programming that we're all stepping outside of, and we have all experienced some level of being fucked with because of it.
Yes.
Shadow banned or fucking kicked off fucking this or that. You know, I was erased completely from the fucking all the shit that I wrote for in the Nation because I pissed them off so much. Like, it's like erased, you know?
Wow. You were just deleted as an entity? You had never existed to them?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Fucking-
that's how you know you're a fucking warrior, Steve. Nice job.
And that's all. I mean, and that's part of my reality. Having a segment of it erased by a fucking keystroke is part of that. That's a fucking that. How is that not a fucking simulated reality?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a different like level of it than we're talking about, but it fits in perfectly with all of it at the same time. And you just like laid out also, if there's anyone listening who wasn't woke, like they're woke now.
He gave you a laundry list of things to go Google tonight.
Yeah. Wait, propaganda's legal? No, what's funny about that is when you bring that up and people are like, well, what? It was illegal before? Like they don't even care that it's legal. They just are confused.
Well, you know what I find fun about trying to tie the NPC thing back to simulation theory is how do we treat viruses in our society medicinally? We try to eradicate them, you know, and then you hear about now they're trying to use viruses as carriers to cure cancers or other diseases. So now we're take that to the macro, and people like us that can see, trying to see through the veil. I'm not saying we're all doing it perfectly, but we're trying. And the NPCs, the people with the blank minds, no objective reality, we're a virus to them. They've even got a term for us called wrongthink. We're all guilty of wrongthink, right? It's a virus. They want to eradicate it. But like any virus, once this starts to spread, unless you put enough penicillin on it, you're not going to stop it, right? So now we have Facebook purges, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Dude, and they have to, because I just thought of this. Like, it's not just the NPC meme. It's like the idea of memes themselves. And like Damien Kalki says, the NPC meme was rolled out by the cult of Keck or whatever. That's whatever you want to call that group of people who is doing things like that, using mimetic magic. Like that would be the way to most greatly affect the simulation, is to use mimetics to our advantage, right?
Right. And oh yeah, for sure.
So it's like, and that's why they're fighting back so hard against things like the NPC meme, is because they're super effective. Like you're invading it's like a mind virus. It's literally the study of mimetics is the study of viral transmission. But mentally.
Well, one of the fun
playing out in real time every day, man. I said something on my friend's thread on Twitter, and it resulted in like 18 different people with vote blue no matter who, no, vote red no matter who, red wave, blue wave, blah, blah, blah. And like, I had to like question, like, are these people real? Like, I don't know if they're real. There are bots. There are fucking David Brock, who ran Hillary's campaign, had Correct the Record, which was a self-proclaimed troll farm, and nobody fucking talks about that. With fucking like Cambridge Analytica and shit, motherfucker, they bragged about it. They were advertising on Facebook to hire people to become part of Hillary's troll army.
Let's take it a step further. And now that, especially like for me, for example, the hours of, and actually most of us for hours of video we have up online, they could easily make a video of us saying anything they wanted us to say.
Oh yeah.
And it would look real. It would look and sound exactly like we look and
Obama
sound.
did a commercial about it. Do you remember that?
No.
Dude, I swear to God, he fucking him and Jordan Peele did a thing where Jordan Peele was doing Obama's voice, and it was Obama being computer manipulated
Oh yes.
to say what Jordan Peele was saying, and it was like a public service announcement to be like, hey, careful, this shit can happen.
Yeah. So like we don't even know if the shit we're seeing was ever real to begin with.
What's the classic thing? Magic doesn't work unless you reveal the intent. So
Weird. Yeah. Oh my God. Wait, why is that a thing? Who
That's
says
okay.
that?
everybody.
What?
Yeah.
That's a concept in magic.
It's concept in magic.
Wow. I didn't realize that. So like when we're talking about like, oh, they always tell us what they're doing to undo the karma, it's actually more like they're telling us what they're doing so that it'll work.
Yes, absolutely. That's why you see the drills before the mass shootings. That's why you see names of cities being the way that they're named. It's huge. It's a rabbit hole to go down. But once you start looking for revelation of intent before things like 9/11 or the bombing of Pearl Harbor or the signing of the Declaration of Independence, it all starts tying it together. They're revealing what they're going to do before they do it in order to manifest their intent. They even got a term that I like to.
Dude, I've been missing that this whole time.
There's even a term called manifest destiny that
Well, I know that term, but
yes, manifest destiny. It's
wow.
Well, look that one up. I'm going to dig into that because that's a big topic too. But
Yeah.
Well, there's also precognitive art.
Oh, explain.
So precognitive art is you draw an image of something before it happens, or you draw an image of a tragedy before it happens, or you draw an image of an historic celebratory event before it happens.
Yeah.
There's a massive amount of precognitive art surrounding 9/11 that goes back to the early 70s.
Well, and then they're like, well, that shows it was planned out ahead of time. But I'm like, couldn't it just show that they've like are psychic?
They're declaring their intent.
What about the guy
Okay.
that was it? It was the one of the Rothschilds.
I see what you're saying, Steve.
He had. I'm sorry, this is blowing my mind right now because one of the Rothschilds, he has all of these pictures from the 1940s before the trade towers were built. I can't remember what year it was, but anyway, if you look at the pictures, his watch, it's 9/11 in the morning.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Right. Oh, and there's his office is full of these things, all of these things that say 9/11, and it's totally freaking bizarre. There you go. It's precognitive art. It's these portraits that were made of this guy.
The Who
Weird.
did an album called Party Music, and the original cover of the album was Boots Riley with like a bass pedal that he was pushing like a detonator, and the trade centers were exploding behind him. This came out in May of 2001.
But Boots Riley is not in on it. He can't be. He's Boots Riley.
My point about precognitive art is that, look, if you can direct energy, if you're the arbiter of what happens when you focus your intent, like Jeff was suggesting or saying, if you're the arbiter of that, then you're, for good or ill, then you can direct your energy and your intent into like, let's say, general artists, because there were a lot of artists that had precognitive 9/11, not a lot, but enough that had precognitive 9/11 art. So if that's a direction of intent and energy, then yes, absolutely, you don't have to personally play a role in the event itself. You just got channeled into creating this thing.
Well, this leads perfectly into the idea of free will. Do we have free will in this situation?
In a simulated reality?
Yeah.
I think you can, but you have to. Maybe that's the point of a person becoming a hermit. You know, they've cut themselves off from all the crap around them. They're not taking in all this external intent from other people, and they're just trying to get their own intention out into whatever sphere it is.
Or maybe it's like, to take it to hermetics, maybe it's more like you see that this will could be coming, and so you step out of its way if you're wise enough to see. Right?
stepping outside of the pendulum swing. Right?
Yeah.
You know, you put your will into the pendulum as it goes this way, and then you step out of the way before it swings back and hits you.
Yeah. What
So-
say you, Jeff, about free will?
I used to think that, yeah, of course I have free will, and now I'm not so sure, because what if it's just simply subroutines that I haven't explored yet, that I don't
Yeah.
know what's in there, you know what I mean? It's like, what's the, well, I don't know where the edges of this system are to say that I'm choosing something that's outside of it. I might think I am, but I'm not. And
Yes.
it's all just part of subroutines that keep getting executed, if then, you know, and or not, and so on and so forth. You know, there's logic gates opening and closing.
So I tend to think it's like Jeff, you had said, like, of course we would have like quests to go on. And I tend to think like you could be like subject to these. I've had shamans prove to me that you don't really have a choice in many situations, and it's gonna happen like no matter what your will is. And I've experienced that. So I seem to have some gnosis of it. But I think like there's also like quests, right? Like if you go on this quest and you do it in a certain way, that's going to change which route you took, I guess. Like maybe there's predetermined routes, but you have choice within it to some extent.
Right. I view the whole thing like a almost like a probability matrix, or like the weather. You know what I mean? If you got whatever, high pressure or low pressure and moisture and, you know, wind and a couple other ingredients, then bam, you have a hurricane. And it's like, if you look at just sort of human behavior like that, if you have enough fertile soil, then a thing can't help but grow there. So there are things that are going to be probable, you know, but then there's all these other little branches that may or may not happen.
Yeah.
And you can do things to increase the probability too.
That's
Like,
true.
you know, if you're going to plant a seed, it's better to do it in the spring and then get the fruit off of it in the fall, right?
Right.
So every single religion is telling you how to get out of the matrix. That's the goal of every single religion, is transcendence, right? Like that's kind of a core key concept of all of them. The point of every movie about the matrix is to get out of it, and how to do it, and kind of a storyline, at least, as to a process that you can go to. And it's been interpreted in a lot of different ways in science fiction and religious texts, the difference being science hasn't caught up yet. And there's just, I mean, I don't know how it could be made any more clear that it is a simulated reality. There is a pathway out of it. We are all trying to do that right fucking now.
Yeah.
And that there is a pathway to it. Like I think that's where faith comes in, no matter how you look at it, how scientific you are, how religious you are. You do take it on faith that there's a pathway out.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm super into Gnosticism lately. And there's definitely like simulation. This would be a simulation. And I they describe it in different terms, but it's similar. And there is a pathway out. But what's really interesting to me is that there's a simulation above that one too. So like you get out of this one and hopefully you've got enough of your shit together. You know, you made it there and that was a huge accomplishment, but you're still then going to have to get through the next simulation. Like we're a couple layers deep still. If you're like Inception, if you're thinking about it as the Inception thing, like we're like a couple layers deep in the dream.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what like fucked with my head when I first heard that in some of the Gnostic lectures I've been listening to. I'm like, wait. It's already super hard to get woken up. And then we're going to wake up and we're going to be like, all right, here's this new simulation, like get through that one, which seems like a special kind of hell.
But then you have certain religions that say that when you die, you become a god yourself. And then let's consider, if that were the point, maybe the next level of simulation is you're in charge of a simulation.
You can get your own planet. Shout out to Ongo.
You knew exactly where I was going with that, Steve.
Do I need to give you some thunder back, bro? I'm sorry, dude. I didn't mean to fucking
No,
do
you're
that.
good. No, that's awesome.
So is that like what we should be aiming to do then in a simulation? Is we should be aiming to get out of it?
I mean, it really depends on your level of comfortability. Like I said, Elon Musk kind of seems to be aware that we're in a simulation, and he's not doing anything to get people out of it.
Or himself.
Yeah, I mean, he shot a dead hooker into the air. Like, he's clearly fucking with everyone. You know, he just paid like a $40 million fine.
Okay, but he believes, I think, that he's going to merge with the AI and that that's the good side of things to be on. And so I guess like in his simulation, is it AI that's running the simulation and that's why he's okay with it?
Like, he's scared of AI though. That's Elon Musk. He embraces it, but he's scared of it.
Well, he seemed to be scared of it. He seemed to be scared of it a while ago, but now he seems like gung-ho. He's like, whatever, we're all cyborgs, and I'm going to put the fucking neural lace in my head and merge with AI, and it'll be fine.
Well, that was the weird thing about his interview with Joe Rogan, because he would say he laid out, if you watched it, he laid out this harrowing story of how scary AI is, and at the end of it, he said, "But let's embrace it." What the fuck?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what I'm like. What if? I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, who is behind the simulation? Would it be like an AI, or would it be like a god? Or like Claude was saying, like, we wake up from the simulation, we're in charge of another one now, and that's its own simulation. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to say.
I don't know that you can know what you're trying to say when you're trying to think abstract, because what we have and what we can experience, unless we're some level of transcendence, like Steve was saying, what we have and what we can affect is what we can see and feel and touch and hear, right? And then we have these weird little things that happen to us where we see things that don't make sense, and that blows holes in our picture of reality. And most people, they'll try to forget that. Oh, play it off. Oh, that didn't happen. I didn't see a ghost. That wasn't real. And then they'll think about it at the wee hours of the night. You know, maybe that was real.
Yeah. Well, Megan's saying, wouldn't the thing beyond the simulation be the all, especially if you're thinking of hermetics?
How could they know unless Thoth was telling the truth, Hermes was telling the truth when he quote unquote wrote the book, which that can be debated, but he talks about trying to ascend or transcend or whatever. But he also says in the book that we aren't the all. So, and we can't be the all. There is only the all, and we're within the all. The all is mind, and we are mind. So,
but that would make us the all. Or in Gnosticism, like you have a spark of the. They don't call it the all, but to me it's the same thing. And you have the spark of that like in you, but you aren't it. But you're trying to like become it, and that is when you exit the matrix or the simulation, right? Is when you become. I'm saying it really simplistically, but like when you become that energy completely, then that is when, and that is the all. So you are the all, but you're not the all because you're not like in control of everything, and you're not in that state of being. Like you're not at that level, but you have like part of it in you or whatever. I feel like they're saying the same thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. They're saying that. Well, was it Steve or Jeff brought this up earlier? You see the same story told in different ways, in all of them. Unless you're reading a book on nihilism.
Yeah, nothing matters. The Morla of philosophy.
Maybe the all is the equivalent of the ocean, and we're all drops of the ocean. So we're the same. We just lack the power and the sort of all the fullness of the all, or the creator, or whatever that is. But again, back to simulation theory. To me, that doesn't disqualify from being a simulated world. I mean, if let's say whoever created the simulation or is an AI, or the simulation itself is a form of AI, it stands to reason that whatever we're operating, whatever is operating us. So these are like little biomechanical suits. We can enter this environment, we can enter this holodeck, we can experience things like taste and touch and sound, a fairly small frequency, a very small range of electromagnetic frequency, and then we're out of the shell. Once we're out of the shell, is that just simply a computer program that gets re-uploaded into a mainframe, and is the thing that's operating the shell just simply bits of code that are coming out of the mainframe? Is that connection ever lost? We're always connected to it, and that feeds into reincarnation and all those kinds of things. So it's like, I don't even know even if I exit, how do I exit the matrix? Again, I don't know where the edges are. If I exit this world and I feel like, yeah, I got it, and I'm back into the mainframe, what does that even mean? Because maybe the mainframe isn't finished with the bits of data that was you.
Well, it's like in the Matrix when he comes out of it, I'm like, well, that's a shit deal. Like, it's pretty fucked up out there. Like, which is why some people go back in. But it made me think, like, when you were talking about, like, if you, not that this is really, I mean, it's happened to all of us to some extent, but like, if you're reading a really good book or you're watching like a really good show and you're like immersed in that sort of, and like to the point where like when it stops or you come out of it, you're kind of like, wait, you know, like for a second you have this like moment of like unreality, or you're not connecting with reality. Or like if you're dreaming and you wake up every once in a while, you're just like, who am I and when is it and where am I, you know? And I feel like that could be what it's like too.
Yeah, totally. Because my brain's wired more sci-fi like, so I think about it like this, like what if, right? Again, I'm crazy with the what ifs, but what if really some super, I don't want to say the word advanced, but let's say some super advanced alien race, and this is just like some video game, right? So if we as people go and make video games, make them at certain levels, you know, you got things that are completely immersive, and then you got like Mario Kart World or whatever. So maybe it's a type of video game that you play and you play through it. And maybe the alien brain is so advanced that this is just what we experience as life is just the small section of what could potentially entertain them. And the other levels of the Matrix are even crazier levels that could entertain but what would a creature with an IQ of like 500 even think about or even be entertained by? I have no idea. Can it feel emotion?
Would they even have to be that much more mentally advanced than us? Do you guys watch Rick and Morty?
Yeah.
So I haven't watched them all. I saw an episode a while back, and I don't remember the context of it, but basically they're in this shopping mall or something, and Rick sees a game, or Morty sees a game there, and Rick's like, "Here, play it." And he puts the goggles on him, and he disappears, like blacks out for 30 seconds or something, and then Morty comes and hits it off of him, and he's freaking out.
It's so fucked up.
He's like, "What happened? My family? Where's my family?" And the game was basically, when you put it on, you take over this person's life from birth, and then when the game ends, you die, and then you're back into this body again. Yeah. And you had just experienced 60 years of life.
I never saw that episode before I wrote my book, Sine Curve of Aeons, and there's something very similar that happens in there. So I did not like get that. I didn't lift it from Rick and Morty. You can look at the published date. It was first.
Cool.
They lifted it from me.
There you go. That fits right in with what.
Well, that's why I don't want that's why I don't want us to create simulations and AIs that are so believable that you can immerse yourself in it. Because what would that be like to be like Rick or Morty in that scene and come out of it and just like you just lost a whole entire lifetime of people and connections. Like that's fucked.
They had an episode of Star Trek that told the exact same story, where Captain Picard, he ended up on this his consciousness got sucked into some kind of alien thing, and all of a sudden he lived out an entire life with these alien beings. And he woke up when he died, and the whole point is these aliens had died off centuries before, and they transferred the extent of their knowledge to Picard through a lifetime on their planet while he was asleep. And he woke up and he's got this entire memory of being one of them, and he's like, holy shit. You know?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to say who in case it's private and they can share their own stories, but there's somebody who in our group who was talking about someone they know that was taken away by extraterrestrial beings of some kind, or ultra-terrestrial, or whatever you want to call them, interdimensional, and lived 3 lifetimes and then came back.
Jesus.
And I'm like, what the hell kind of shit would you have in your head if that happened to you? 3 lifetimes and this one. That's some fucking deep shit.
I knew people when I was doing Renaissance festivals that would talk openly about all of their past lives, and that they had experienced the thoughts, feelings, emotions, pain, what have you, in a dream state of multiple points throughout different past lives. I can totally jive with what you were just saying because it's a fairly familiar story.
Well, I want to think like there's a couple instances from past lives that I've had gnosis of, but they were especially, oh my God, I almost said especially, what's happening to me? They were especially traumatic parts of those lives. And so I feel like the reason I was able to go back to them was because of that trauma. But I hope that I kept all the knowledge or understanding gained from those lives into this one. But part of like this, like, you know, fear I have is that you have these multiple lives, but you don't actually like take much of it with you. And so I don't know.
Well,
Consider what builds our long-term memory. What builds your long-term memory are choices that you make and situations that you're in that are out of the ordinary. They're not you don't have a long-term memory of driving. You have a memory of driving, but it's going to blend together of all your other memories of driving down the highway.
Mm-hmm.
But you have specific memories from your life that made a greater impact that you can call back to almost exactly what you were wearing that day. Now consider all these people that are having these flashbacks of previous lives. You're not going to have a full-on memory of living from age 1 to 900 as whatever other being it was. You're going to have flashes of those specific times in that life, right? So when you hear about people talking about their past life, you know, regressive therapy or whatever it is, it's always these bizarre situations and things that you can't really put context around, right? So all of your main memories that create basically who you are, they define you now. You could go back and think about what put that, all the little different steps that it took to create that memory and put that emotional attachment onto it because you lived through that. Those other memories that compound into that main one aren't as meaningful. So when you have a regressive therapy and you look back into a previous life, you don't have all that attachment to build into that. You just have this one little situation, a memory. Oh, I was standing there and I was looking at the ocean and I had an awareness of seeing two suns in the sky, and then you come back to it. So just, I don't know where I'm going with this, but
there's correlative
chasing threads.
Research that says that trauma is encoded in our DNA.
Oh yeah.
Past traumas are encoded in our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
So that jives with past lives, that jives with a simulation, a program. It's something that you can call, it's a file you can call up. You know, whether or not you're having waking conscious control of that or if it's subconscious control of that happens in a dream state. I don't know if that's something that you can also become the arbiter of, but it's a thing that happens. And there's esoteric as well as scientific information that codifies it.
Yeah. And Terence McKenna talks about it in Invisible Landscapes that he believes the mechanism to have full recall from your DNA is taking Harmines or other hallucinogens, which literally like unzip DNA and like access all of the information in it and then put it back together. But so he like proposes a scientific method for accessing that.
Would that be recycling code like Jeff was saying?
What do you mean?
I think it was you that said that, Jeff. As you go through a rebirth cycle or whatever it is, you said it was a recycled code.
Right.
Come back and you reborn.
Yeah.
Be the same
Or
thing.
it's just, maybe that's what they're saying, like all of this DNA has junk DNA. Maybe it is our past life encoding in the matrix, in the simulation.
Yeah.
Hanging on to it.
There's also, speaking of DNA and memories, been proven that memories or aspects of personality will stay in a person's organs. So people who get an organ transplant will sometimes take on the person they got from, or even feelings for the person that, for someone who the donor had feelings for, all kinds of stuff like that. So.
Oh, how bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah, or like they'll have like personality traits all of a sudden that are different, or like cravings for food that they've never even had.
So is the entire shell a computer? You know what I mean? Nobody knows where the mind exists, but obviously our body stores actual memory. You know, if you can put my heart in somebody else and they suddenly crave bourbon, that's it's obviously not anything they would want.
Chris Putnam is asking, is it strange that Elon Musk created the zip drive as one of his first companies that can store a ton of data?
Elon Musk is a character, isn't he?
He is just a cyborg, and he is just he's just propelling the
Fucking cartoon.
Yeah. That Joe Rogan interview he did, I kept waiting for Joe to ask if he has a time machine because it really felt like he was leading up to that. Kept asking him all the questions about the future, and it's like, it's just funny.
yeah.
I think like the first half hour, about the first half hour mark, it was like, is Joe going to ask him if he has an actual time machine? What the hell?
And he missed his chance.
Related to the Trumps and Nikola Tesla and the time traveling Templars.
Time traveling Templars, bringing it back.
Time travel. And also bring it back to simulation theory. Everybody needs to go check out the link between, and bringing it back to what Steve said about Kennedy. I've been thinking about it since he said that. But the link between Kennedy assassination and the assassination of Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, it's fucking weird.
Yeah, it's totally just mind blowing. The synchronicities, the correlations, the same names.
Yeah.
It's messed up.
That does make you like, it makes more sense that would be a recycled code sort of thing than that people are controlling than what's happening in our world to that extent.
When junior in high school, my history teacher, Bill Miller, broke down the correlation for us. And I, at 17, was not applying it to sim theory. And he turned it into a whole joke thing. Like, he turned it into a bit. It was fucking great. And the punchline was, the night before Lincoln died, he was in Monroe, Maryland. And the night before Kennedy died, and then just trailed off.
It's huge. It's bizarre, and you can really draw that whole scenario back to video games again, and say when video game designers are building levels and they're building quest systems and all the stuff you have to go through, especially if you're playing modern video games, they'll recycle content. They'll recycle characters. Yeah. They'll put different skins on them, and they'll change wording in the storylines.
Isn't that why there's that funny thing from Skyrim of like, I used to be a warrior like you until I got an arrow to the knee or something?
Yeah.
So if, as above, so below, if we're doing it here to entertain ourselves, surely the universe works the same way, right? Or whatever works the same way.
Is that what you're saying? Like, we're creating... Okay, wait. Let's just... Wait, what?
I said, does it fit that fiction creating reality?
Fictional realities, because we ourselves are fictional realities. I mean, that's replicating code, homie.
It is.
That's all.
Well, like in the Matrix, what does he say? In the Matrix, Agent Smith tells Neo, humans are a virus. And what do viruses do? They self-replicate.
Yes, absolutely.
So if we create simulations, which we do, in fact, there's a world simulation where there is every single person on the planet is in it, not necessarily as you, but as a point of data. So that's a thing. It's, I think, run out of Stanford, or I don't know. Sasha's going to listen to this and scream at me. But anyway, it's a real thing. So we created simulations like this. And then we also have things like virtual reality that are super... realistic. If you've ever tried it, it's pretty creepy. So if we're creating things like that, are we God then? And if so, why is being God so shitty?
If the thing that we're creating has consciousness of itself, then yes, we are God.
Good answer, Steve. And I don't think it does, so we're not. What do you guys think?
I actually wrote an article about this recently. I won't get into the whole thing, but it's about the concept of the golem. And the concept of the golem is, you recognize it from Warcraft and all this other fantasy stuff, but it actually started in Abrahamic religion, and the original golem being Adam and Eve, which is a molded out of clay, creating mankind in God's image. That's a golem.
True.
And it goes on, and there's, in Kabbalistic magic, there's the concept of the golem where you're building this thing out of clay. It kind of looks like it can look like anything, but the magician breathes life into it himself, and it becomes a splinter of his own consciousness and fulfills its duty with that splinter of consciousness in as far as it can. It's a dumb creature, can only do one or two things. So my idea is that esoterically, whoever the royal they is, the Illuminati, whatever it is, are using these laws of causality throughout reality as we know it. Being a simulation, everything has rules, everything has code, and they have to abide by this. They're creating these NPCs, people that can't think for themselves, into golems themselves to fulfill their own, to manifest their destiny, to fulfill their intent. That's why cities are built the way that they're built, directing energy in one direction or another. That's why TV programs people the way it does, because they want energy directed in one direction or another. So it's just a bigger, rather than having to create the golem themselves and form it out of clay, we all become the golem, and we're all programmed with whatever intent that is, and a splinter of their consciousness, which becomes ours through their mimetic magic in Hollywood, television, movies, media, whatever it is.
I have to talk about Neverending Story again now, because okay, and spoiler alert, so if you want to read the book, like, don't listen right now. It's like, when you're creating that, if you're splintering off your consciousness, which I think ties into Gnosticism too, and we all have like a splinter of the consciousness in this, and we're trying to get back to the source. And in the Neverending Story, Bastian goes in and he creates everything in Fantastica, and he's just spouting off stuff. He's a very creative person. All these storylines, all these people that it affects, all this nonsense and good and bad, all of it he's creating as he goes. When he gets to the end, which is a very, very difficult thing to do, it's very hard for him to get back to his world. He finally gets to the waters of life. And he gets into it, which is hard enough. He had to anyway, I won't go into details. He's in the waters of life, surrounded by the Ouroboros, and he needs to go out the other side to get back to his place where he belongs, his real world. And he can't go back, they say, unless he completes all of the storylines that he began. Right? And that's impossible to do. He's like, well, fuck, I'm fucked. That's a direct quote. And luckily, I won't tell you what happens. He gets through anyway. But so what if we're all like this created splinters of consciousness, and God is just like, oh shit, I gotta get all of those back. I gotta end all those storylines.
Oh wow. Well, it does say God is the beginning, the end, the Alpha, the Omega, the on-off state of the universe, right?
Well, this is why we have a mission to wake everyone up.
Wow.
All right, so we're nearing the end. So what are your final burning thoughts about simulation that you haven't gotten to yet, and or words of wisdom that you want to leave people with?
Okay, well, I guess I'll take it. Well, I wrote down break free of the programming, but now I'm wondering if maybe that's not right. This has been an awesome conversation. I think more realizing that there is programming and trying to realize for yourself the extent of the programming and the extent of the nature of reality. It doesn't hurt you to figure out what the nature of reality is. It's going to change your perception of reality, and that's never a bad thing, right? If you can understand that there is no spoon. I can't help it, Steve. I'm sorry.
Drink, bitches.
It's definitely not going to be detrimental to you. Hopefully, if you're I'm trying to be politically correct. If you're in a good mental place, it won't be detrimental to you. And then from that point, learn how to alter your reality to eventually learn how to break free from it. You know, like anything, you know, a baby has to be in the womb for 9 months, right? And even after the baby is born, it still has to be under its parents' care for several years before it even can interact with the world around it. My theory is that as we ascend, we're going to be no different. So take your time, I think.
Well said, Claude.
Thank you.
All right, man. I'll hop in here. Um, I would say ultimately that there's got to be a way out. Like that's one thing that I fundamentally believe, and that is that level of transcendence or that act of transcendence. That's what that out is, and I don't necessarily have an answer to what makes that permanent outside of death. I can experience life completely outside of the matrix all the time. But man, I'm gonna try. I would encourage other people to try, and I don't necessarily think that means go out and fucking buy a cryo chamber and do DMT in it. I don't know if that's the answer. I'm not recommending it, but I am. I mean, there's some form of transcendental meditation in every aspect of religion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whether it's deep in prayer is a term that's common in American Christian different sects of Judeo.
There's spinning.
There's a transcendental meditation practice for every religion. There's it's the essence of Schrodinger's cat really is a transcendental state. It's where something is neither living dead or both dead and alive. That's a transcendental process in and of itself. So there is a way to experience it. Whether or not there's a way to sustain it, I don't know, but I would like to think that there is, and I would like to find out.
Amen.
Awesome.
What do you think, Jeff?
Well, I love the hell out of simulation theory because, like I was saying before, there's not a lot that I can come up with that conflicts with it, So even the craziest things, parts of the Bible, whatever, like God shall peel off the whole sky or whatever, or every heart will know. Everybody will be transformed in the twinkling of an eye. Mm. All of that could easily be done with a simple line of code change in a simulated world, in that kind of world. But really, I think the main takeaway for this being a simulation is we got to try not to think of it in terms of a simulation being not real, but not real. Because the first thing I think of when I think it's a simulation, it's not a real world. It's real enough because you're in it and you're experiencing it. So definitely be there and be present for it. And the second thing is that because if it is in fact a simulation world, you're not here by accident. You're here on purpose. You're here because you're supposed to be here. So however shitty things might seem, you're here to transform them from a shitty state to a good state. Go from that 0 to a 1, or whatever direction you want to take it in. So, exercise those rights and privileges. And to the question you asked before, if I think we're gods, I believe we are, but all little g, little gods. We're here we can easily make and break all kinds of things, entire universes, even if we take a computer, program a simulated world into it, we just did that. We just made that, just created that thing. So that's another important takeaway. And there's no spoon is my personal mantra. So
beautiful. Yes. Yeah. I want to follow the cult of Jeff. So get that started.
I'll start to do it.
I forget what you just said that I wanted to.
There's no spoon.
Right before that.
You're here on purpose.
It'll be the first thing you have to repeat every day when you're a cult member.
Shit.
You already failed lesson 1, Lindsay. Come on.
Damn it. I'm sorry. Well, everything you said was perfect anyway, but I was going to add something to it. But I guess you guys are awesome. You always bring things back to a beautiful close. So I would just add, I love that idea of being present in it, no matter if it's a simulation or not, and doing what you can with it, right? But I also just have this really strong urge to scream at everyone, don't go a level deeper. Who knows what level we're at, but don't go deeper. Go out. On your way out is better. That's what I think. So, friends, this has been your electric, concentric, analog dose of wisdom. According to me, your host, Lindsay or Corey Sharman, and our guest, Claude. Thank you for being here, Claude.
Of course.
And Steve, thank you for being here, Steve.
Oh, thank you, man. This is always a blast.
And Jeff. Thank you for being here, Jeff.
Thank you. And one more time, I got to say, The Matrix.
Everybody's so drunk now. All right, so we might be in a completely fabricated reality. It may or may not be a prison for us. We might be able to escape it. If we do, there might be a wholly different simulation waiting for us one level up. How many layers deep does it go? In the end, does it matter if reality is a simulation or not? It doesn't matter to me, at least, because I still do what I know in my heart is right, good, and true, and is beautiful at every juncture possible. I am human and I fuck up, for sure. We all do. None of us is yet an ascended master, but I know the more I act in accordance with my highest vision of my best self, the better this simulation seems to go. So no matter what the stuff of reality is made of, and no matter what purpose it serves, you know your own purpose and act toward your own highest path. You'll never go astray. So until next time, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.